The museum was quiet that evening, the kind of quiet that carried the soft hum of air vents and the distant ticking of a clock echoing off marble floors. Thomas moved carefully through the grand hallway, his mop gliding across the polished tiles in steady rhythm. The building was vast and full of history, but to him, it was simply his second home. He had worked there for nearly 10 years, cleaning the same hallways, dusting the same paintings, making sure every corner looked perfect before the morning crowd returned. Most visitors never noticed him, and he had grown used to that. People walked past, eyes full of admiration for the art but blind to the man who kept the place shining. Tonight, though, something felt different. The winter air outside had brought a strange stillness, and through the large glass doors, he saw a figure standing by the front desk. A young woman, bundled in a long beige coat, clutching a small notebook to her chest. She looked unsure of where to go. Thomas hesitated for a moment, wiping his hands on his uniform, before slowly approaching. The receptionist was speaking to her, words flowing quickly, but the woman's expression was lost, confused. She began flipping through her notebook, writing something down, then holding it up. "I can't hear you." The receptionist frowned helplessly. "I think she's deaf," she whispered under her breath, glancing around for someone who could help. But the museum was nearly empty now. Thomas took a step forward, feeling something tug at him. He knew that look of quiet frustration, the same one he'd seen on his sister's face so many times before. She had been born deaf, and he had learned sign language when he was a teenager just to talk with her. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. He cleared his throat softly to get the woman's attention. When she turned toward him, he smiled and began to sign slowly. "Can I help you?" Her eyes widened in surprise, and a faint light of relief crossed her face. She signed back quickly, her hands moving gracefully. "I'm looking for the special exhibit. I got lost. The person at the desk doesn't understand me." Thomas nodded, his fingers responding smoothly. "It's this way. I'll show you." They began walking through the dimly lit corridors, the sound of their footsteps echoing gently through the vast hall. She watched him with quiet gratitude, occasionally asking questions with her hands, about the art, the museum, even his name. He answered each one, smiling softly, grateful for the rare chance to use a language that meant more than words. As they walked, Thomas couldn't help but notice the calmness she carried, the way she looked at each painting as if listening to the stories it told without sound. When they finally reached the exhibit, her eyes filled with wonder. She signed, "Thank you," her fingers moving delicately, and he responded with a nod and a smile that said more than words ever could. What neither of them knew was that high above, behind a glass balcony, someone was watching, the museum's owner, a billionaire CEO who had come for an unannounced inspection. From that quiet corner, he had seen everything. The janitor who stopped working to help a lost visitor not out of duty, but out of pure kindness. Thomas stood quietly near the entrance of the art exhibit as the young woman moved from one painting to another, her eyes full of emotion. There was something deeply peaceful about watching her admire the artwork. She didn't just look. She felt every brushstroke, every color, every emotion frozen in time. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was natural, like two people who didn't need words to understand one another. Thomas found himself studying her reactions, the way her expression changed with every new piece she saw. It reminded him how powerful art could be, how it spoke to people in ways language never could. When she turned back to him, she signed something that made him smile. "You must love working here." "It's so beautiful." He nodded and signed back. "It is. Especially now." He wasn't sure why he added that last part, but it felt true. There was something about her presence that brought warmth to the otherwise empty halls. She looked around again, then pulled out her small notebook and wrote a message, handing it to him. "Thank you for helping me. People usually just walk away." Thomas read it, his heart tightening. He looked up and signed gently, "You're welcome. You remind me of my sister. She can't hear either. She taught me sign language when I was young." Her face softened with surprise and understanding. She signed back slowly, "Then you understand." He nodded, smiling. "Yes, sometimes silence speaks louder than noise." For a moment, they simply stood there, two strangers connected by the quiet beauty of understanding. The last golden rays of sunlight streamed through the tall windows, reflecting off the polished floor and the gleaming frames of the paintings. Dust motes floated lazily in the air, catching the light like tiny stars. It felt like time itself had slowed down just to hold that moment. Up above, on the glass balcony that overlooked the exhibit, the museum's billionaire sponsor, Mr. Charles Reynolds, leaned against the railing. He had come unannounced for an inspection, hoping to find flaws or inefficiencies to discuss with his board. He wasn't expecting to witness anything so human. His sharp business eyes followed the janitor's every movement, the patience in his hands, the respect in his manner, the care in his gestures. He was helping this young woman not out of obligation, but genuine kindness. Reynolds had built his fortune by believing in efficiency, control, and power. Yet, in that simple exchange, he saw something money couldn't buy: decency. A quiet act of compassion that didn't seek recognition or reward. Down below, the deaf woman wrote one more note in her notebook, smiling as she handed it to Thomas. "You're a good man. The world needs more people like you." Thomas felt his face grow warm, but he just shook his head, smiling humbly. "I'm just doing my job," he signed back. But deep down, he knew it wasn't just a job. It was a moment that reminded him why he cared, why kindness mattered even when no one was watching. What he didn't know was that someone was watching. And by tomorrow, this small act of empathy would change his life forever. The next morning, Thomas arrived at the museum just as the first rays of sunlight touched the grand stone entrance. The air was crisp and cold, carrying the faint scent of rain. He walked through the empty hallways with his usual calm, the echo of his footsteps bouncing off marble floors. Everything felt normal. The silence, the routine, the sense of belonging in a world where he was mostly invisible. But when he reached the front desk, something unusual caught his eye: an envelope resting on the counter with his name written in elegant handwriting. He frowned, wiping his hands on his uniform before picking it up. Inside was a thick piece of cream-colored paper embossed with the museum's logo. The note read, "Mr. Thomas Gray, please report to the director's office at 9 a.m., Mr. Reynolds would like to speak with you." For a moment, his heart stopped. Mr. Reynolds, the CEO himself. The billionaire who owned half the art foundations in the city. Thomas had never spoken to him, never even seen him up close. His first thought was panic. Maybe he'd done something wrong. Maybe helping that visitor had broken some rule. He swallowed hard and tried to steady his hands as he folded the letter back into the envelope. When 9 o'clock came, Thomas knocked gently on the tall wooden door of the director's office. "Come in," a firm but calm voice said from the other side. He opened the door to find Mr. Reynolds standing by the window, dressed in a dark tailored suit, looking out over the city skyline. Sunlight glowed around him, painting him in gold. For a long moment, the man didn't turn around. Then, with a quiet sigh, he spoke. "You're the janitor from last night." Thomas nodded nervously. "Yes, sir. If I did something wrong, I..." Reynolds turned, cutting him off with a slight shake of his head. "Wrong." His expression softened. "No, Thomas, you did something right, something extraordinary." Thomas blinked, confused. "I don't understand." Reynolds walked closer, his voice steady but thoughtful. "I saw you last night from the balcony. The way you helped that young woman, the patience, the kindness, the way you spoke to her in sign language. You didn't know anyone was watching, and that's what makes it rare. You reminded me of what this place should be. Not just a building of art, but a place of humanity." Thomas felt his throat tighten. "I was just trying to help," he said quietly. Reynolds smiled faintly. "And that's exactly why I called you here." He turned to his desk and picked up a folder. "I want to offer you something. A promotion. A new role, head of visitor experience. You'll train the staff in basic sign language and empathy-based communication. I want every guest, regardless of who they are, to feel welcome." Thomas stood frozen, unsure if he'd heard correctly. His eyes stung with emotion. "Sir, I don't know what to say." Reynolds extended his hand. "Say yes." When Thomas shook his hand, his rough calloused fingers met the polished grip of a man who had never known hard labor. But in that moment, they were equals, bound by something greater than status. That evening, as Thomas walked home beneath a sky painted in soft orange light, he thought about the deaf woman, about how a simple act of kindness had changed everything. Sometimes, He realized, the world does notice, and it listens, even in silence.